Welcome back, everyone, to my channel. My name is Dana, and this is Dynamite Reads. So, just a couple of announcements, or just one, I guess. I started a Twitter account. I've always been super intimidated by this because I hate the limitation on the number of characters, and I'm just so used to Facebook and not Twitter, Instagram, things like that I didn't feel a need for Twitter. But with BookTube, all other booktubers have Twitters, so why not? I also have a Goodreads that I'm linking in my description below. I haven't kept up with it very well, but I'm trying to. And then I also have my Instagram linked down below. It's my personal Instagram. I just decided to keep the same one. It's not really like bookstagram worthy. It's just casual, like everyday things. It's not nice photography for sure. But I thought about doing that, but it just feels more real to me to have like what I do on a normal daily basis on there instead of fancy photography. Not that I don't like those Instagram accounts. I love them. I love looking at them, but that's just not me. And I don't have time for that. I like to just take a picture of what I'm reading with my puppy curled up with me, and that's fine. And it being my personal account, there's not a lot on there that I'm not like have to keep hidden from everybody. Like it's nothing. I'm pretty boring. But yeah, so follow me on Goodreads. I am trying to do better about keeping up with that. I am on Instagram the most, and then Twitter is new. I don't know what I'm doing, so go follow me and we'll see how that goes. That'll probably be more for like polls and stuff later on, once I get to that point. Alright, so my last video, which will be linked down below, was about the prequel and my thoughts on how I feel about it going before I read it. But obviously I'm still going to give it a chance. I love the Hunger Games trilogy. I've always liked it, but I am rereading it again before reading the prequel just for anticipation of the release. And I did my reread of The Hunger Games, and I still loved it. And there is so much left out in the movie. But I think the movie did a really good job otherwise, because that's a lot to fit into a movie. That's the hard thing about book to movie adaptations, is there's so much depth to it and not a lot of time. I'm going to talk about some differences between the book and the movie. Most of it, I'm going to try to stick to the big stuff, but there are some little things in there that I want to talk about too that aren't big deals, but I really liked them. Kind of tried to do my hair in a braid because it's the Hunger Games. I'm not good at doing hair at all. Like the only way I can braid is putting it in a ponytail and then braiding it, and even then I can't do like one braid. Anyway, I'm not good at hair or makeup. I'm trying though, guys. Alright, so the movie begins a little bit differently than the book. It starts with the decree of like how the Hunger Games all started. And then it cuts to Caesar Flickerman and Seneca Crane doing an interview before the games and things like that. Then it cuts to Prem screaming, like waking up from a bad dream, a nightmare, and it's Katniss consoling her, things like that. But in the book, Prem doesn't have a nightmare saying that it was me. And then, but she's snuggling up with their mom. But I think it was a good choice to have Katniss and Prem like sleeping together and waking up together in the movie, because you don't have her inner monologue about how much her sister means to her. They try to show it in the movie, but there's so much more with her inner monologue and thoughts about Prim that are left out. So another thing that was different at the beginning in the movie was it shows Katniss hunting alone, and then Gale coming up behind her and kind of ruining her chance at getting a deer, and it's the first deer she's seen in a year. Whereas in the book, they go hunting together. They actually go fishing instead. They gather some greens, they pick some strawberries, which they deliver to the mayor's back door, where Mage answers. Mage is the mayor's daughter. She's left completely out of the book, which I kind of understand, but at the same time, I kind of wish, I feel like her she ends up getting the Mockingjay pin from Mage, and I think that was more meaningful than the way she got it in the book. In the book, she gets it at the Hob, like she just happens across it, and the lady there, which I assume is Greasy Say, S-A-E, you know who I mean, I can't say it, and she's like, oh, you can have it, type thing. So that's kind of a letdown. You don't get to see her interaction as much at the Hob, and they spend a lot more time there. In the book, at the Reaping, it's actually the mayor that tells the history of Panem, why they have the Hunger Games, all that stuff, versus Effie doing welcoming everybody and then having a big video screen explaining it, which I think is fine. It's faster, gets the plot moving a little bit more, just, which I understand. Effie's dressed a little differently too. She's in all pink in the movie instead of having a green outfit and then pink hair. Not a big deal, but it stood out to me because I love the color green. And then another thing, at the Reaping, Haymitch is there as well on the platform and makes a fool of himself by falling down the stairs. Haymitch is a big joke to everybody. He's drunk all the time, which they show on the train, but not as much in the book, because on the train he throws up and then falls into his own vomit and passes out. And PETA takes him to the bathroom and gets him in the bathtub and cleans him up and all that good stuff. Which I think is kind of Katniss is oh, he's being nice. Why is he being nice? Is he trying to kiss up to Haymitch and get him more sponsors? And it's all survival. All of her thoughts about PETA, she's torn in her monologue because he's so nice. He's just such a nice guy, and she's he's already trying to survive by being nice to people. Then I kind of jumped a little bit ahead to the train, back to the Reaping. After their names are drawn and Katniss volunteers, all that stuff, when they go in the back room to meet with family, I think it's a big deal that PETA's dad comes and visits her. He brings her cookies and says, don't worry, we'll take care of the girl, her sister Prim. I thought it was really cool. I kind of wish it would have showed more of that in the movie. And then, of course, Gale comes, her mom and her sister come. She does tell her mom she loves her. She tells her not to check out again and stuff, and that stuff too. But she tells her she loves her, and I think she tried to end what she thought was the end of their relationship on a good note, because their relationship is very strained. Yeah, and then so their mom, Prim, Gale, PETA's dad, and Mage all visit her post-Reaping, and Mage is the one that gives her the pin and tells her they allow you to have a token from your district. Some more minor things. When they get to the Capitol, well, I guess it's kind of a big deal. The prep team is seen a lot more in the book. What are their names? Like Octavio, Flavis, and something else. They have more screen time. Vienna, I think. Yeah. Those three, they get more screen time. And I think Katniss thinks to herself, she's like, it's hard not to hate my prep team. They're total idiots. And yet, in an odd way, she sincerely thinks they're trying to help her, which I think is funny. Like, she thinks of them as like little pets. It doesn't say this in the movie, but it's Cinna's first year being a stylist for the games. And he specifically asked for District 12. So you can already kind of see them trying to make this into a rebellion from the beginning. Because after the chariot ride, Haymitch asked whose idea it was to hold hands in the chariot, and it was Cinna's idea for them to hold hands. And he said, just the perfect touch of rebellion, says Haymitch. So that idea is already spinning in the beginning because they think, anyway. But I like that Katniss connects with Cinna on such a deep level, and part of me kind of wants to ship them because I think that would have been an interesting relationship. And yeah, so deeper conversation with him. And then their outfit for the chariot ride is described more as like fiery capes, whereas it was, I don't know, it was weird in the movie. I think it could have done a little bit better. Also on the chariot ride, Katniss is more confident and like blows kisses and is more interactive. In the movie, she just pick up one of the flowers and like she waves kind of. But you can see the hate in her face. She's so angry and pissed and like trying to figure out what's going on. And I think Jennifer Lawrence does a really good job of trying to keep like a blank face to not show your intentions, but if you know her and you can tell she's angry. Anyway, the next like big thing they don't have in the movie is the Avoxes. You see one in the background. She's pale and has red hair, but it matches her dress. And I think that's sort of a nod to that character in the book. Part of me wishes they would have included that part of the story, but I also understand there's not a lot of time. But I think it's interesting because they show a hovercraft, whatever, at the beginning of the movie while Katniss and Gale are hunting, and they like run in the bushes and hide. Whereas in the book, after she sees the Avox, she realizes she recognizes her from one of her days hunting, and her and Gale hide while there's a hovercraft there, and it goes down and picks up, or it kills the boy that is with the Avox girl and takes her, and they cut out her tongue and make her an Avox. Which they do say at the beginning when they're snacking on the bread and stuff that, oh, they'll cut out our tongues or worse when Gale's talking about running away. So they make little references to it, which is nice, but I wish I would have seen more of that because she recognizes her and comments on it, and then Effie's like, you wouldn't recognize a traitor, blah, 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 blah. And then Peeta's like, oh yeah, she looks like Deli Cartwright. Yeah, Deli. She looks like her. And that's why Katniss recognized her, and Peeta covers for her. Then later on, her and Peeta are on the top of the building on the roof and talking about it. And she tells him her experience, that she saw her and didn't help and felt so guilty about it. Next, they talk whenever they're talking each other up, how Katniss can shoot and stuff with her bow and arrow, she talks him up. Instead of it being just Peeta's strong, he can throw a 100-pound sack of flour, it's he wrestles and he's won like first or second place. He's only lost to his brother, like at their school championships and stuff. So yeah. And then in the training, I did like this addition to the movie. It's not in the book, where Rue steals a knife from one of the tributes, and then the other tribute gets mad. He's like, I'm gonna kill you first. And you see Rue in the ceiling, and she has a knife, and she's like giggling. I kind of like that. That was interesting. When she does her one-on-one, she does a lot more shooting with the bow and arrow, and there's other types of bow and arrows there too. But she like does a tuck and roll and like shoots and then shoots another thing after missing the first one, of course. And like a couple of them are watching, but not all of them. And then she's mad and she does all her stuff, whatever. And then she's so upset because she thinks she's ruined her chances that when she gets back to her floor, she just bolts to her room and gets under the covers and cries and cries and cries until dinner. And while in the movie, she is seen as stubborn and strong all the time, like no fault whatsoever. She's fierce and all that, but she also has her moments in the book of doubt and just like all out, like freak out on the inside and like crying. And she hides under the covers in her room so there's no cameras or anything. She refuses to come out until dinner. Another thing she's doing in the book, she's already comparing Peeta to Gale. Gale's like sternness and his like shouting and complaining about the games to Peeta's gentleness and his kindness and things like that. So you can see her trying to struggle with that already. They do have detailed training sessions with Haymitch and Effie when they do go their separate ways for training. Effie, like, you see her getting trained how to walk in heels and be proper and stuff. And then you see her with Haymitch and trying to, like, bring out some personality in her for her interview. And she's so hateful. And they describe her as sullen and hostile. And I think Jennifer Lawrence is really good at the sullen and hostile part. A lot more detail there. In the book, it's not a big deal, but like I think they do it for the second movie where all the tributes are on the stage for the interview and then they go up, versus them being off stage and coming up one at a time. They miss out on a lot of the interview, so they ask her favorite thing about the Capitol, things like that, and she says the lamb stew, which they send her some later on in the book in the arena, so I think that would have been cool little detail to have. They talk about her score and how she got it, but she can't talk about how she got her score, things like that. You miss out on a lot of the inner monologue, like she's constantly talking, like thinking about her sister, and that she's never gonna stop owing Peeta. Also, another tiny detail, but I think speaks to how horrible these games are, is it mentions that people will go on vacation to previous arenas and do reenactments, which is just completely sick. But yeah, it mentions that in the book too. In the arena, it's a little bit different. Peeta does his head shake, for the bow and all that stuff. And she gets the bag, she gets a knife thrown at her, all that stuff. But after she makes her getaway, she struggles to find water. You kind of see in the movie where they just shove it all into one clip of her like touching the moss and like searching for water and finding it. And then the little moth butterfly thing is there. That takes place in the cave with her and Peeta. She's a little moth before she falls asleep. So that's included, but in a different way. Her pack is a little different too. She has like these night vision goggles, although she doesn't know what that is necessarily. Crackers and like a type of beef jerky. She also has iodine in her pack to purify her water. I think the movie, it was fine for the movie to show her just like she knows what she's doing, like she is searching for water, but she almost died from that in the book. She almost died from dehydration. Like, but I understand the change. She also, the first night she sleeps in a willow tree because it's so willowy, like the willow branches are gonna cover her. And then when the careers come out at night and they kill, I think it's the District 10 girl, because the fire she lit, they walk away and then the cannon doesn't go off and they're like, oh, I thought you killed her. And they're like, I did it myself. And it's PETA who says, we're wasting time, I'll go back and finish her off. And PETA is the one that goes back and kills her. Which blows Katniss's mind that he's with the careers and killing people already. The next morning, this is a small detail. I wish these little details would have been in the book. It happens multiple times where Katniss, like after that night when PETA and the careers walk by, she jumps out of the tree, looks at the camera, or what she thinks is a camera, cocks her head and smiles. And then she's like thinking to herself, there, let them figure that out. In the book, this isn't a big deal, but the fire like singes off like 6 inches of hair. That's a lot. Not a big deal, but I was like, wow, that's a lot of hair. She's a little bit cockier in the book. Once the careers chase her into a tree, she's like, how's everything with you? Like, she's kind of cocky about it. And then Rue shows up that night and tells her about the tracker jackers, and she starts sawing that night because they're all subdued from the smoke from the fire, and tries to do it while the anthem is playing, but can't finish. And then when she goes back down to her pack, she has like the medicine and stuff for her burns. Her hallucinations after the tracker jackers things are way freakier in the book. They spend a lot more time with her and Rue going about their hunting and stuff. Rue doesn't like put the leaves on her until she wakes up. She just kind of kept watch over her the whole time. And then they do their hunting and they eat a lot more, and they talk about Rue's district and where she's from. They talk about Rue and her district and all that stuff. Like, it's a lot stricter in District 11 than it is in 12. And it blows Katniss's mind. But yeah, when they blow up the food, like, she loses hearing in an ear, which is a way big deal for a hunter. And then she is so injured and out of it that she stays the night, like kind of burrows a little hole and like buries down in there because she's cold and doesn't have her pack. Rue has it and tries to cover up for the night and then leaves in the morning. When she finds Rue was under the net in the movie, and she gets her out from the net, and then Rue sees the guy from District 1 Marvel, and Katniss realizes she's looking past her at someone else, and she turns around and, like, you know what happens. But in the book, she comes running and she's still in the net while she's, like, the guy from 1 spears her. Katniss does her whole singing her to sleep. She does that whole thing, and then something that was cool in the book was that District 11 sent her bread, which is a big deal because, like, sending any sponsor, being a sponsor to any tribute costs a lot of money, and it's a very poor district. And Katniss, like, tries to find a camera and verbally thanks them, like, my thanks to the people of District 11, which is cool. But I do like in the movie where they show, like, what could be her father gets super pissed and start, like, going off, like, starts a riot. I think that was a good change. Then later on in the cave, we get so much more time with Peeta. They go into so much more detail, so much more like stories, like depth to the characters. She gives Peeta some sleep syrup because he doesn't want her going to the cornucopia for the feast to get him medicine. And she drugs him, she goes to the feast. Afterwards, the feast happens kind of the same way. After that, they are holed up in the cave for several days while it's like pouring rain. And Katniss mentions it's either for Cato or Thresh, because Thresh has been kind of hiding in the wheat field area the whole time. There's also a lake in the book. It's not in the movie at all. But yeah, and it's like the pouring rain and the flooding and Cato and Thresh going at it. And that's how Thresh dies versus the Mutts. They stay holed up while they recover from their injuries. They get sent like a good chunk of food and they kiss a lot more. The food they get is like rolls and cheese and apple, and the lamb stew that Katniss loves so much. Like, they get some good food. And then once it stops, Katniss has another one of her vulnerable moments, I think, that would have been good to see instead of her being like so tough and strong and taking care of everything and everyone. She tells Peeta in the book, she just like breaks down and says, I want to go home. And yeah, I think that would have been nice to have in there. You also kind of find out as I talk more that Peeta's dad liked Katniss's mom, who ended up liking a coal miner who could sing really well. And whenever he sang, all the birds stopped singing and all that kind of sweet stuff. And Peeta tells her, like, the first time he heard her singing, he was a goner, just like Katniss's mom was for her dad, which was really sweet. Which I think would have been interesting to have, given that Peeta's dad gives her like the cookies and stuff and promises to take care of her family if she died, that sort of stuff. I think that's really interesting. They also, when they're eating their big feast in the cave, they're like licking their fingers and stuff, and they talk about how Effie would throw a fit with the way they were eating, and she's like, look at our manners, Effie, like towards the camera. And I think that's kind of funny. They go out hunting one day and then return back to the cave. That's in the book, but they where Foxface, the girl from 5, dies eating the berries. But they go back to the cave for one more night, and then they go about their day. In the book, the last day in the arena, it doesn't like get dark and stuff. Like, it gets really, really hot during the day and really, really cold at night. So they're making their way to the lake, and Cato like breezes past them, is running from something, and it's the Mutts, and Cato's just like booking it past them, and they notice he has like this body armor and stuff. They get to the cornucopia, they climb up there, and they're trying to fight their way off. This is the big one. The Mutts in the book are way creepier, and it's way worse. So in the book, they're described that they can stand on their back legs, kind of like a werewolf, and they have hair color and hair texture, and then the eye colors of the dead tributes from their current games, which is totally messes with Katniss's mind, especially when she sees the one that looks like Rue, and it's just so creepy. Like, it's so realistic to them that she wonders if those are the actual tribute's eyes. Whereas the movie is they're just kind of like big dogs. But I feel like the mutts in the book are way worse and way creepier. They cut one of Peta's legs. I think it's the same leg as his injured one. Because in the book, he doesn't injure his thigh, it's his calf that gets injured below the knee. And then in the book, once Katniss shoots Cato with an arrow so they can kind of push him off the cornucopia and let the mutts take care of him, they don't. They just like scratch at him and bite out of him, and it's hours. And it starts with Cato screaming, and then it slowly dies down to him whimpering to the point where he is just, you can barely hear him say please, and that's when Katniss shoots him. Like, he suffers a really long time because he has all this body armor on, so it takes the mutts forever to kill him. After that, they make the announcement that there can only be one winner, and then they, of course, argue over who should go home. Peta takes off his tourniquet that Katniss made for his leg, and so he starts to bleed out, so she rebandages it, and they have their back and forth about it. Katniss tells Peta, "You're not leaving me alone. Like, if he dies, she will never go home," which I think, that says so how puffed up these games are. She says she would never return. Like, she would always be stuck in the arena trying to think her way out. And Peta doesn't want to go. Like, he knows everyone wants Katniss to come home. Like, even his mom said that District 12 might actually have a winner this year, and that she was talking about Katniss and not her son. So he knows, like, it has to be Katniss to go home. They do their thing, they both win, and then I think when the hovercraft comes, I think this little detail would have been nice to have in the movie, where they separate Katniss from Peta so they can operate on his leg because he's dying. And she just goes nuts and is like banging on the glass, like trying to get to Peta. And they eventually end up having to sedate her. And then it's several days of sedation. Like, she kind of wakes up and she sees like the AVOX girl that she recognized in her room taking care of her. She gets sedated over and over. Like, they just keep knocking her out. They need to give her enough time to recover. And then they have their interview. And the other really puffed up thing is that in their interview, they replay like highlights from the game and make them watch them. That's really messed up. Yeah, so anyway, they have like 2 separate interviews, one in their suite, things like that. And then Peta has a new leg, which they don't have in the book. Her hearing gets repaired, all that good stuff. And then they tell Peta, that they didn't like their stunt with the berries. And he's offended, like, why didn't you guys say anything to me? And they're like, you didn't have to act. Katniss is the one that needed the coaching and the help with that. In the movie, I did like them adding this little detail of seeing the game makers behind the scenes. I liked the couple of scenes with Snow and Seneca Crane because it showed Snow's way of thinking. Like, he's like, says how he doesn't like an underdog, and he like tells Senna to, fix the problem, that kind of stuff. So you kind of see him pulling strings and trying to manipulate people. And then you see in the movie Seneca Crane with the berries, the Nightlock berries. And so he's gonna die. Like, he screwed up by letting them pull at his feelings and stuff. This video is a lot longer than I anticipated. I feel like a lot of it was little details that didn't necessarily need to be mentioned, but they're little details that would take like 2 seconds. But after making booktube videos, I can kind of see how 2 seconds makes a difference. So anyway, that is my take on the differences between the book and the movie, the ones that meant the most and stood out the most to me. There's so much more depth to the books. If you've watched the movies and love the movies, you should definitely read the book. So much more inner turmoil with Katniss. And you see her struggle with how she thinks of Peeta. And then she kind of thinks about Haymitch too a little bit, how she can kind of understand after being in the games why he drinks so much, because he's been a mentor for how many years and he's never had winning tributes before, and it's so hard watching kids die every single year that it just gets to you, and they're not gonna win anyway, so you might as well drink yourself into a stupor. So yeah, chat with me in the comments. Are you rereading The Hunger Games before the prequel comes out? Or are you going to read the prequel and then The Hunger Games? I don't know. Let me know in the comments what you think. Are you excited about the prequel? I'm kind of nervous. My thoughts in the other video linked down below. Let me know if you liked this video by giving me a thumbs up, and I will see you next time. Thank you.